A deepest fear. The first time I ever spoke to a crowd was at my high school graduation. But the first time I'd ever intimately spoken to an adult audience was for a ladies' Bible class back in March 2013. My executive cabinet was in place, and the late Dr. Betty Strickland had traveled from the South Side to support me. There were about 60 ladies in attendance, and I was recently reminded of this day by one of my biggest cheerleaders. The scripture reference was from 1 Samuel 17, where David is speaking back to Goliath. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. Now, the Israelite army had been running from the Philistine army for over 40 days. Big old Goliath had been tormenting them, and David was just a boy. Oftentimes I think of God a bit quieter now that Jesus reigns, lest we forget the power of the Father. The Old Testament was written for our understanding, and luckily we live under the New Testament with the grace and mercy that came with Christ. God didn't play then, and he doesn't play now when it comes to his children. When God brings you to something, he's going to bring you through it. He wants us to trust him despite the magnitude and depth of our fears. When he truly shows up for us, he doesn't do it lightly or happenstance, for his hand will be woven all through the story. Time and time again, God uses those whom the world deems insignificant and unfit for the job to do the job. We don't have to be afraid with him, not of rejection, failure, the unknown, or being alone. When we struggle with overcoming our deepest fears, we should reflect on what God has already brought us through. It's so easy to get caught up in the moment that we lose sight of our blessings. Remember every accomplishment, whether small or large. We all have been recipients of God's love. We must accept that control is an illusion. It's impossible to maintain something we've never had. God is in control. Do you fully trust him, or are you just interested? We must show up. Take on the challenge of living on purpose with the faith and patience it requires. For faith is not the absence of fear, but the courage to face it anyway. Then show out. No, when you decide to show up for battle, the enemy will be waiting to provoke every doubt and fear. Make sure the armor you're wearing is the Lord's, not the latest. Lastly, rest. Rest knowing when you show out with all the strength God has given you and there is no more fighting you left, he will be there to carry you the rest of the way. I hope you feel encouraged to face your deepest fears with me, knowing like David, this battle is not ours. Tony.